A young man stands before a courtroom, underestimated by everyone, his appearance, his age, his demeanor. But what if this teenager was more than anyone realized? What if he wasn't just another troubled teen, but a genius with a mind sharp enough to challenge the very system that tried to break him? When the judge mocks him, thinking it's just another case to dismiss, he's about to face the shock of his career. What happens next will leave everyone stunned and the courtroom forever changed. Before we start the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new one. Judge William Carter had been on the bench for over 20 years, and in that time he had seen thousands of cases, but deep down he held a belief he never spoke aloud. Some people just didn't belong in his courtroom, at least not as anything other than defendants. That's why when 19-year-old Malik Johnson stood before him, Judge Carter barely hid his smirk. The teenager wore a loose hoodie and jeans, his hands shoved into his pockets. He looked exactly like the kind of kid the judge was used to seeing, another troublemaker, another waste of potential. The case? A minor trespassing charge, something about Malik being in a fancy law firm's office after hours. The judge sighed, flipping through the case file lazily. Well, well. Another one who thinks the rules don't apply to him, he muttered, just loud enough for the courtroom to hear. Some of the officers chuckled. Malik, however, didn't react. He simply stared at the judge, his dark brown eyes unreadable. "All right, kid," Judge Carter continued, leaning forward. "Let's get this over with. What do you have to say for yourself?" Malik finally smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Then, to everyone's shock, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a neatly folded document. "Your Honor," he said calmly, unfolding the paper, "I'd like to represent myself." A few gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me." Malik stepped forward, handing the paper to the bailiff, who quickly passed it to the judge. Judge Carter adjusted his glasses and read the document. His face slowly turned red. This wasn't just any request. This was an official motion, filed correctly, citing legal precedents and case law, flawless. The kind of document that only a highly skilled attorney could prepare. The judge looked up sharply. "Where did you get this?" Malik crossed his arms. "I wrote it myself." The room fell silent. Judge Carter scoffed. "Boy, don't play games with me. You expect me to believe that you—" Malik cut him off. "I expect you to read it, Your Honor." Something in his voice, calm, confident, unshaken, made the judge pause. He cleared his throat and continued reading. With each line, his frown deepened. This was no amateur attempt. This was the work of a legal mind far beyond its years. Judge Carter's hand trembled slightly as he set the paper down. He looked at Malik again, really looked at him this time. "Who are you?" he asked. Malik's smile widened. "I'm the lawyer you didn't see coming." Judge Carter leaned back in his chair, still unsure of what to make of the situation. He had assumed the young man standing before him was just another troubled teenager. Now the entire dynamic of the courtroom had shifted in an instant. Malik was no longer a defendant, but something far more interesting. A challenger. "Let's see what you've got then," the judge muttered, his voice losing some of its earlier arrogance. "If you're as smart as you claim, you should have no problem explaining why you're here." Malik didn't flinch. Instead, he straightened his posture and addressed the courtroom with a calm authority that surprised even the most seasoned lawyers present. "Your Honor," Malik began, "the law is clear on this matter. My client, me, was accused of trespassing on private property. But here's the thing, the property was abandoned, and according to Section 321 of the state law, it's not trespassing if there's no explicit sign of private ownership. Furthermore, the so-called property owner has failed to file proper documentation, making their claim invalid. The room was still. The words Malik spoke were precise, legal jargon flowing smoothly, as if he had years of experience. Several lawyers exchanged glances, none of them quite knowing what to think. Had they just underestimated this young man, or was there something more to him? Judge Carter, his face now a deep shade of crimson, glanced back at the motion Malik had submitted. His hands were trembling, something he hadn't felt in years, not since he had started on the bench. This was no ordinary teenager. Malik was playing the game on an entirely different level. "Are you telling me that you have studied the law on your own?" the judge asked, disbelief still evident in his voice. Malik nodded. "I've studied more than that, Your Honor. I've worked under some of the best lawyers in the country, learning the ins and outs of legal practice. I was just waiting for the right moment to step up." Judge Carter's eyes widened. He felt a wave of shame wash over him. Here was a young man he had judged as nothing more than a troublemaker, and now he stood before him, more knowledgeable and prepared than the vast majority of lawyers he had encountered. The judge adjusted his glasses, trying to regain control. He was a man who prided himself on his authority, but this was different. This felt like a moment of reckoning. "And how, exactly, do you plan on defending yourself in this case?" the judge asked, his voice less condescending now, tinged with genuine curiosity. Malik's response was quiet, but every word carried weight. "By proving that justice is about more than appearances," he said. "It's about understanding the law and using it to fight for what's right, no matter who's standing in your way." The courtroom went silent again. Even the judge couldn't find a retort. He realized for the first time that he was in the presence of someone far more than just a teenager. Malik wasn't just challenging the case, he was challenging the very system that had allowed people like Judge Carter to pass judgment without truly understanding the people they ruled over. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Everyone waited for Judge Carter to respond, to push back, but he remained silent, clearly grappling with the reality that the young man standing before him was not the person he had thought him to be. In fact, Malik had completely turned the tables. The teenager who had been dismissed as just another petty offender was now schooling the entire courtroom on the intricacies of the law. Malik stood there, unwavering, as the judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Johnson," Judge Carter said, finally breaking the silence, "I'm not used to seeing someone like you in my courtroom. It's rare for a person your age to have such an understanding of the law, but I'm still not convinced. You need to show me how you intend to prove your case." Malik's face remained calm, but his eyes glinted with something fierce, a mix of confidence and determination. He'd been preparing for this moment his whole life, and now that it had arrived, he wasn't about to back down. "I can do that, Your Honor," Malik replied. "First, let's start with the evidence. The prosecution claims that I was trespassing in a private office, but there are no records of the property owner filing any notice of private possession. No signs, no legal documents. I'm not just a teenager trying to get off the hook. I'm pointing out a serious legal error here." Malik turned toward the prosecutor, who looked caught off guard. The prosecutor had no immediate response. He was used to seeing defendants crumble when faced with legal jargon, but this was different. Malik was dismantling their case piece by piece. "I also have a witness," Malik continued. "One of the building's security guards was on shift at the time of the alleged trespassing. They can confirm that the building was open and no one had informed them of any restrictions. The office doors were unlocked and no one was asked to leave." He then pulled out another sheet of paper, a security log detailing the time and actions taken by the guards that evening. The evidence was damning, and it was clear that this wasn't the work of a teenager looking for an easy way out. It was the work of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Judge Carter stared at the documents, his face a mixture of awe and disbelief. He couldn't remember the last time he had been so thoroughly outclassed in his own courtroom. "You've really thought this through," Judge Carter admitted, his tone now much more respectful. "I have," Malik said, his voice steady. "But this isn't just about me. This is about making sure that the legal system works for everyone, no matter their age, background, or appearance." The judge's face softened slightly, and for the first time in this trial, he didn't see a teenager in front of him. He saw someone who deserved to be heard, someone who had been underestimated for too long. "I have no choice but to dismiss the charges against you, Mr. Johnson," Judge Carter declared, his voice carrying the weight of his decision. "You've proven that you are not trespassing. You've also shown that you are more than capable of handling this matter on your own. I'm impressed. You're free to go." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Some were stunned. Some were applauding Malik's unexpected brilliance. Others, like the prosecutor, sat speechless. But Malik didn't seem to care about their reactions. He simply nodded respectfully to the judge and turned toward the door. As Malik walked out of the courtroom, a few people stood up in his honor. He was no longer the misunderstood teenager who had been looked down upon. He was a young attorney, a genius in disguise, who had just shown the world that looks could be deceiving. As Malik walked out of the courtroom, the weight of what had just transpired began to sink in. The chatter in the halls of the courthouse was loud, but Malik paid it no mind. He had just achieved something that many people would have never believed possible, a teenager who had been dismissed as a troublemaker, outsmarting a judge and the entire legal system. But this wasn't about pride or proving anyone wrong. This was about something far bigger to him, justice. He reached the courthouse steps where a small crowd had gathered. News of his unexpected victory had spread like wildfire, and reporters quickly approached him, thrusting microphones in his face. "Mr. Johnson," one of them asked, "how do you feel about the judge's decision today? Was this all part of your plan?" Malik smiled, but it wasn't the cocky grin that others might have expected. It was calm, knowing. "I didn't do this to prove something to anyone. I did this because it was the right thing to do. No one should be judged by the way they look or where they come from. The law should be about fairness." The reporter nodded, clearly impressed by his maturity. "Do you see a future in law, Mr. Johnson? With your knowledge, I'm sure you could be one of the best attorneys in the country." Malik paused for a moment, considering the question. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing. He wasn't done yet. "I've got a long way to go, but I plan to keep learning. I want to help people, to make sure that those who need justice the most don't get left behind." As he finished speaking, a car pulled up. A sleek black vehicle with tinted windows. The door opened and a well-dressed man stepped out. He walked toward Malik with a confident, purposeful stride. "Mr. Johnson," the man said, extending his hand, "I'm Richard Thornton. I was watching your case today, and I must say, impressive work. I think you and I could accomplish great things together." Malik raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I'm a senior partner at a law firm in the city," Thornton explained, his voice smooth and persuasive. "You've got talent, raw talent, but talent nonetheless. We could offer you the resources, training, and mentorship you need to become a top attorney. In exchange, we'd like you to join our team." The offer was unexpected, and Malik took a moment to absorb it. He had always dreamed of making a difference in the world, but he had never imagined that someone like Richard Thornton, one of the most influential legal minds in the city, would be offering him a chance to work with him. "I don't know," Malik began, hesitating. "I've got my own path I'm trying to carve out. I don't want to lose sight of what I believe in." Thornton nodded, understanding the hesitation. "I get it. I'm not asking you to abandon your principles. I'm offering you a chance to take those principles further with the resources to help you make real change." Malik thought about it for a moment. He had proven to himself that he could succeed on his own, but the opportunity to learn from someone who had been in the business for decades was tempting. Perhaps this was the next step, his chance to elevate his knowledge and fight for justice on a larger scale. "I'll think about it," Malik finally said, shaking Thornton's hand. Thornton smiled. "Take your time. We'll be here when you're ready." As the man walked back to his car, Malik stood there, watching the vehicle drive away. His thoughts raced. He had already shown the world what he was capable of, but now he faced a decision that could change the course of his life. Would he accept the offer and step into a world that could potentially offer him everything he ever wanted? Or would he continue to forge his own path, no matter the cost? For the first time, Malik realized that the future was his to shape. And no matter which direction he chose, it would be on his terms. The next few days were a whirlwind for Malik. His victory in the courtroom had gained media attention, and soon his story was everywhere. Headlines read, "Teenage Genius Defeats Judge in Court, Shocks the Legal World." It wasn't just about a minor trespassing charge anymore. It was about the underdog rising against the odds, breaking expectations, and showing the world what was possible. Malik couldn't escape the attention. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. He was now a symbol of hope for those who had been overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed by society. But it wasn't all praise. Some lawyers saw him as a threat, while others, like Judge Carter, respected him. But amidst all the excitement, Malik couldn't shake the weight of the decision that lay before him, the offer from Richard Thornton. His mind raced, trying to figure out if it was the right move. Could he really work for someone else when his instincts told him that he had the potential to make his own path? Did he want to be a part of a big law firm? Or did he want to create something more personal, something that aligned with his values? He spent days weighing the options. Finally, after a long walk through the city, Malik made up his mind. He had learned a lot in those few days, not just about the law, but about himself. He didn't need to fit into someone else's world to succeed. He could create his own. Malik called Thornton's office the next morning. His heart beat fast as he picked up the phone. He knew this would be a defining moment. "Mr. Thornton," Malik began, "thank you for your offer. It means a lot to me, but I've decided that I want to take a different path. I want to start my own practice, focusing on helping those who can't afford high-priced lawyers. I believe that justice should be accessible to everyone, not just those with money." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Thornton spoke, his voice calm, yet slightly surprised. "I understand, Malik. I respect your decision, but don't forget, the door is always open if you change your mind." Malik smiled, his confidence now stronger than ever. "I won't forget. But this is the right choice for me." "Thank you." As Malik hung up the phone, a sense of peace washed over him. He had made the right decision. Now it was time to take what he had learned and build something meaningful, something that would stand for what he believed in. He didn't need the validation of big law firms or powerful mentors. He had himself, and that was enough. The next chapter of his life was just beginning, and this time no one would be able to dismiss him.